Welcome, everyone. My name is Sarah Ray from the Bloomfield Public Library. We're excited to have Ginny Apple back today to talk to us about black bears in Connecticut. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you, Ginny.
Okie dokie. Hi, everybody, and welcome. It's on this rainy day, although it's cleared up a little where I am. I'm happy to be back and talk about black bears. As you know, pretty big topic in the state right now. So I think the more that everybody can learn about black bears, the better off they are and the better off we are. And I don't know, some people say I should say we are, and then they are, but anyway, we both need to learn to coexist, and it's possible. So hopefully that will happen. And I know Bloomfield's gotten more bears now. Uh, you didn't have the Connecticut River as a barrier, but they found themselves over there too. So they're spreading out throughout the state, not in droves, but they're still the biggest population is still in Northwest Connecticut. So I'm going to hide myself so you can look at all the beautiful bears. And again, Sarah, I think said if you have questions, you can put them in the chat, but you can also ask them at the end. So, okay. All right, let me just close down my little, you guys, and then, okay. All right, so as you know, I'm a master wildlife conservationist with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. I started the program before I was retired, but I have kind of picked it up quite a bit, so it's pretty much a full-time job because I think it's really important that people recognize our environment and our wildlife species. We're very, very lucky here in Connecticut. We're just over 5,000 square miles. We're the fourth most fragmented state in the country per capita. That means cut up by buildings and roads. So that presents great challenges for our wildlife and our environment. So we'll talk a little about that as we go. And now my screen doesn't want to change. Hold on. For some reason, my screen isn't. My screen is locked, sir. I'm sorry. Let me see why that is. Should I share again or something?
Yeah, if you want to try to not
Yeah, I
share
don't
in the chair again, that'd be fine. That
know.
happened to us one of my last Zoom programs too. So,
Okay, let's see.
like, I see your mouse. I don't know if that's.
No, I know, but it's not. I'm trying to see stop share, so it should go away. Okay, now we'll do it again. I don't know what was up to that. Always a glitch sometimes. Now we go. Okay. So, especially when I talk to libraries and their patrons, I always like to include some literature. Barry Lopez was a very famous nature essayist, and I think this quote really speaks to where we are today. One of the great dreams of man must be to find some place between the extremes of nature and civilization where it is possible to live without regret. And though this graphic might be a Colorado house, we're getting a lot that look like this now. But with the bear superimposed there, I think you get the idea that coexistence is important and it is very possible. Uh, Everybody may know John Muir. He was a Scotsman who came over and got really interested in all of the West, and he helped create our national park system. When he first ran into a bear, this is what he said in my first interview with a Sierra bear. We were frightened and embarrassed, both of us, but the bear's behavior was better than mine. After studying his appearance as he stood at rest, I rushed toward him to frighten him that I might study his gait and running. But contrary to all I'd heard about the shyness of bears, he did not run at all. When I stopped short within a few steps of him as he held his ground in a fighting attitude, my mistake was monstrously plain. I was then put on my good behavior and never afterward forgot the right manners of the wilderness. Obviously, this is a little exaggerated. He was not confronting a grizzly. A lot of times, bears really imagine, out in the Yellowstone area many, many, many years ago, they probably never even saw a person, so they were probably very curious. This is a young yearling bear, and black bears do stand up not as an aggressive posture, but out of curiosity, pretty much. So there are 8 species of bears in the world. and only two of these species, the black bear and the grizzly, have stable populations. The black bear does have the largest population. The brown bears are the most widespread. They are in the Rocky Mountains, Alaska, Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. There's 250,000 across the world, which, if you think about it, not that many. But they have various habitats from deserts to forests and mountains, although they do prefer more open areas. Their conservation status is of least concern, but their spread out nature and reduced habitat make many of the small remaining pockets very fragile. All the brown bears have a large bill, a dish face shape, and a shoulder hump, and their colors can vary from light brown to very dark. The hair is lighter on the tips, which led to the name of the most famous subspecies, grizzly. The two species of brown bears in North America are the grizzly and the Kodiak bear. The Kodiak bear only lives on Kodiak Island. It's in southwestern Alaska. So geographic isolation of these bears from the mainland allow those 3,500 bears to become their own species. But like grizzlies, they can be aggressive, but because of their isolation, there's only one attack on humans every other year. So good to know if you want to go to the survivor on Kodiak Island. Grizzlies are responsible for almost all attacks in North America, with 46 attacks on average and 6 deaths per year. So how do they size up? Three of the world's 8 bear species, as I said, are in North America: the black, the grizzly, and polar bears. Black bears are found only in North America. It ranges from Canada to northern Mexico, and they live predominantly in forests. Thus, they're come back here in Connecticut. Their populations are estimated to be somewhere between 800 and 900,000. There are about 55,000 grizzly bears located in North America, and 30,000 of those are in Alaska. Only 1,500 remain in the lower 48, and now with states demanding to control the populations, that may change. Again, they can be 500 to 900 pounds and standing up 7 to 10 feet, so pretty intimidating. Kodiak bears, though, much bigger, 600 pounds to 1,400 pounds, and they are 8 feet tall. So crazy, huh? Polar bears are 900 to 1,500 pounds and the most ferocious of the three. They can be 8 to 8.5 feet tall. There's 26 to 30,000 polar bears in the world, but their numbers are dwindling very rapidly because of climate change. They are the largest species of bear in the world and the largest land carnivores on the planet. Good question for Jeopardy. They live in snow-covered Arctic ice, as you know, in Alaska, Canada, Russia, and Norway. And their diet consists mostly of animals, especially seals, which they can smell from a mile away. And despite their large size, they can be relatively fast in the water. They can swim at 6 miles an hour. Michael Phelps just barely attained that, but he couldn't outswim a polar bear because they can swim 6 miles an hour for over an hour. Pretty interesting about that species. So grizzly bear and black bear, as you can see, the dish face on the grizzly bear. Again, they prefer open areas, but they will live around edges of forest. They can climb trees, but why would they? They don't have to. They don't usually have any threat. And they are pretty heavy, and their claws are just shaped a little bit different than the black bear. If a grizzly and a black bear were to get in a fight, you'd put your money obviously on the grizzly bear, but I'm told that black bears will put up a pretty good fight. So bears evolved 40 million years ago, so very long-lived animal. The largest bear ever was Arctodus simis, as you see here, the giant short-faced bear. It was 2,200 pounds, 11.5 feet tall, and could run 45 to 50 miles per hour. Imagine that. It disappeared 12,000 years ago. I guess we're happy about that. So here's a distribution of bears in North America. The gray color is the black bear, as you can see. So they're up in northern climes, but they do filter down, as I said, into parts of Mexico. There is a Florida black bear, It's a different subspecies, as is the Louisiana bear, as you can see there. Still look pretty much the same. The dark tan is the grizzly, the white obviously the polar. The dark brown together is where the black and grizzly intersect each other. The light gray is where polar and black bear are found. Light tan is grizzly and polar. So interesting on that distribution. Well, as we all know, a bear is a mythical creature, much maligned. Some folks think it's a dangerous predator, bloodthirsty, often lying in wait for unsuspecting hikers. How about the flame out of its mouth? Not really a flame, that's a dead pine bough, but I thought it kind of illustrated what I wanted to show you. Or a big, cuddly, often lazy creature who laughs, sings, and plays with us. I can't ask you to raise your hands to see who had a teddy bear, but imagine many of us did growing up. For some reason, I had a stuffed camel. I grew up in Texas. Don't ask me why, but that's what I had. So, so if you've never heard of how Teddy Bear got his name, I'll quickly tell you. We all know Teddy Roosevelt. He was an avid hunter, a conservationist. He loved to hunt wild animals in the wilderness. And on one excursion, though, he didn't get a single trophy. He'd had a really hard time in Washington that year, and he just wanted a break. So he asked his friend, the governor of Mississippi, if he could come down there and hunt black bears. So the governor said, "Yeah, come on down. You'll get a black bear here." So they stayed out all day. It was hot, it was buggy. They didn't see a thing. And he said, "This has just been my luck. I think I'm going to go back to Washington." But the governor begged him to stay. He said, "I will promise you, I will get you a bear." So the governor got a scout and some guys with dogs, and they ran down this 25-year-old male bear, and even the dogs even nipped at it. And they tied it to a tree and brought Teddy in here and said, "Teddy, take your shot." He said, "I'm not going to shoot a bear tied up to a tree." So he left in disgust. But of course, as the press usually finds things out, Clifford Berryman, who was a famous political cartoonist for the Washington Post, heard the story. So he drew this cartoon. And thereafter, anytime that he drew a cartoon of Teddy Roosevelt, he'd depict a little cub rather than a bear. So the fame of that went on up to this toy store. There was a Brooklyn toy store called Mischam's, and they were just a general toy store. But he saw the cartoon in the Washington Post, and he asked his wife to make a felted bear. So they made it, they stuffed it, and put it in their window, and they had 100 orders by noon. But they didn't want to sell it until they asked the president if it was okay. And so they sent him a letter. Obviously, back then we didn't have, maybe they had telegraph, but they sent him a letter asking him if they could call it Teddy Bear, or Teddy's Bear, they called it. And he said, "As long as you send one for each of my grandchildren." So this teddy bear on the right now sits in the Smithsonian. So that's how we got the name Teddy Bear. The apostrophe S was dropped later. So many societies throughout the world believe the bear is the ancestor of humans. One reason because it can walk upright. And not long ago, I just saw a bear walk further than I've ever seen it. It just kept walking for like a minute or more. And so they can walk if they want. They don't prefer it. And they do stand up, as I said, to look around. They do figure prominently in the mythology of almost every Native American tribe. In most Native cultures, uh, the bear is considered a medicine being with impressive magical powers and plays a major role in many religious ceremonies. A lot of Native Americans will get their totem animal and often wear the head and the fur of it on their dress. They're also strength of wisdom and strength and wisdom to many Native Americans. And associated again with humans because they can walk on their legs. In fact, a bunch of Native American cultures felt so strongly about how powerful and magical the bear was that they had to get permission to shoot a bear or to hunt a bear. And after they would hold ceremonies afterwards, handling the bear with great respect, even putting it on a pyre like they would their greatest warriors. And as you know, honored for more than 10,000 years, the bear has inspired the naming of two constellations that revolve around the pole star. Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. I was teaching constellations last summer at a camp, and I was showing, the kids, oh, there's this and there's that. That doesn't look like a bear, or that doesn't look like a horse. So, but anyway, you tell the myths with them, and then they like that. We do have two flags in our country that have bears on them. California Republic, which they don't really have grizzlies anymore. Not to say that one might not wander down there, but and then the Missouri adopted their flag in 1913. This was a new flag for them, and they put their seal on it, which at the time did have bears on it. They were without bears like us at that time, but again, now black bears are starting to move into Missouri, Arkansas, southeastern Oklahoma. So they are making their way in those places. If you've ever been to Berlin, the symbol and mascot of Berlin is the Eurasian black bear. So they have statues all around there that you can see. Okay, now it doesn't want to change for me. Hold on. Oh, sorry. So in England, the British Zoological Society near Bristol, England, has created bear woods, and they're bringing in Eurasian brown bears, which I was lucky enough to see one when I was hiking in Slovenia, and they're also going to bring some Eurasian wolves. It's not a rewilding scheme, but it's a project to offer a glimpse into what ancient British woodland was like before humans cleared the forest to make room for homes. And exterminated a lot of these creatures. That same thing happened here in our country. In some of my talks, I do talk about this. The Native Americans, when they hunted animals, they hunted only the animals that they needed, either for food or for fur or for, basic living. But when the colonists came, they started shooting any animal that they felt was a threat to their families, to their domestic livestock. Um, they cut down the trees. We were like almost 95% forested here in Connecticut when the colonists came. And by the 1820s, 30s, we were down to about less than 50%. So obviously they needed wood to build their homes and fences, but they also sent a lot of wood overseas for masts for ships and for furniture. So the land became stripped of trees for building. They also used it for heat and warmth. But even before the 1800s, the mountain lions and wolves were native to here, were extirpated, which means they no longer were here, but they exist somewhere else. And by the 1830s, the black bear were gone. The turkeys had declined to almost nothing. Obviously, they did shoot them for food. So that brings me to one of my favorite philosophers, Henry David Thoreau. As a kid, he used to run around in at Walden Pond in the woods and everything. And then as an adult, he decided to live in the woods for a year. And when he went there, he was shocked to see there was so many less woods. And he said, "I cannot but feel as if I lived in a tame and as it were emasculated country. Is it not a maimed and imperfect nature that I am conversant with? Thank God they can't cut down the clouds." That's probably one of my favorite quotes. So anyway, now we know today bears have returned to our forests because of the growth of forest land. Right now, 57% of Connecticut is covered in forests. That number is dwindling somewhat with the building that we have. Today, New England is the most heavily forested region in the country per capita, by size. 80% of it is covered with trees. And we are about 57% now. This is an older graph, but it gives you the idea. You can see in 1650 how many trees and forests we had, and then down to 2000. And we're hanging less, we've lost a lot. And you'll say, well, there's a lot of forestry going on. And yes, DEEP does cut trees, not so much for the timber, but to create different habitats, very important. And as you know, the emerald ash borer has decimated our ash trees, so they have to be cut along roadsides and also in the forest. Sort of interesting, 7,388 acres of non-forest revert back to forest annually. 3,861 of forest land convert to non-forest. 8,326 acres of forest land are treated by cutting annually, and 0 acres of forest land are disturbed annually by fire. This is in Connecticut. But there are 1,588 acres of forest land disturbed by weather events. So we're pretty safe from forest fires. If we get them, they tend to be just little on the ground fires, but not impossible. More building, but that's where we stand right now. So as you know, the existence of black bears and other animals that we were without for a while are a testament to the health of our ecosystem. And so we must strive as hard as we can to coexist. These are sightings in 2023. Deep does have a website, and they ask you to report bear sightings, not because they're going to be in trouble, but it just helps them know the movement, the density of the bears. If you see bears that are tagged or collared, you can also fill that in the form. Again, it's not as a trouble thing. It's just a way the biologists can take all kinds of different data and figure out. So you can see the dark colors are the Farmington Valley pretty much. And the number of black bears that are reported obviously are not the number of black bears in the state. So if you have a neighborhood that has a lot of what we call anthropogenic food, which is birdseed or unsecured garbage, and say there's 40 houses, and say half of those houses have some kind of a attractant in the yard. So those bears are doing their rounds. So they'll go through every yard, even your yard, if you don't have anything, because they're just checking things out to see if they can get some easy food. And so then, say if 18 of those people reported a bear, it's probably the same bear. So you say, well, how is this data important? Again, it's not important as far as the actual number of bears, but it's important as to the movement and density of bears. So it is very important. It is kind of fun to be a citizen scientist. You can fill out the form. You don't have to put your name. They do ask you to put a location, obviously, so they know where it was. But public sightings of bears have been collected by the division since bears began returning to the state in the 80s. So again, it's a gauge of their distribution and also of a broad index of where they've been seen most. They've been spotted in every town in Connecticut in recent years now. And in 2023, bears were reported from 165 of the state's 169 towns. So they are out there. So here's total number of sightings up to 2020. As you can see, 2001, very, very few. 2020, 11,092. Guess why? We're all looking out our windows, right? We're stuck home. A lot of people said to me, oh my gosh, I didn't know we had bobcat, or I didn't know we had a bear, but we were out looking at our windows, and hopefully that engendered in a lot of us a love of nature and a marvel. I every single day marvel. Last night I live in Barkhamsted. I drove from the bridge in our town to my home, which is about 4 miles, and I saw 4 porcupines, 2 possum, 3 deer, and 1 bear. So I felt very blessed, and luckily I drive slowly, so they weren't hit. So here's bear sightings in the state as of the end of March. So you can see the green part is where there were no sightings, but you can see they have moved out a little bit. If you So the way I say to report a sighting, you can just go CT Deep Wildlife Sighting, rather than put in that whole URL, and it'll bring it there. And they like you to report black bears, moose, bobcat. We're starting a Fisher collaring project, and yes, it's Fisher, not Fisher cat. It's a weasel, and they don't scream, but that's another talk. And if you have an instance where wildlife of any kind might be a cause for concern, they usually say the first call would be to your animal control officer, and then they'll tell you probably to call the Deep's Environmental Conservation Police. So that's the number there. I'll wait a second so you can look at it. So there's also online at Deep, they have a periodical that they don't print, but it's a beautiful graphic called state of the bears, and they do it every year now, and it gives you all kinds of statistics about bears, some that we'll go into now. So one way that you measure whether you have a population of any species is by the breeding population. In 2023, these are the number of sows with offspring. They were reported in over 80 towns in Connecticut, and that means they're moving. Uh, and that provides a better representation of where the breeding populations are in the state. Uh, the females don't disperse very far. Like when a sow has, say, two cubs, one's female, one's male, the sow allows the female offspring to stay in her territory, but not the male. She'll chase it off. It has to go find its own territory. So because the female offspring disperse shorter distance than males, then the females are slower to spread in the leading edge of the black bear range. So a lot of the first sightings in eastern Connecticut of bears will be dispersing bears. The moms kick them out at about 18 months and they have to fend for themselves. So the bear population and growth, the long-term research by Deep has shown that Connecticut's bear population has a high reproduction rate compared to some other areas of black bear range. So 81% first year survival for any animal is pretty spectacular. We do get a lot of roadkill here in Connecticut, unfortunately, of every animal, as you can see there. But it is a healthy population. Conversely, even though it's a bird, and it's true with bobcats, they're about a 50% or less survival rate. So the black bears, the sows are, very protective. They're not going to run at you like the cocaine bear, but they do train those cubs when they're very young to go up a tree, and they stay safe there. So part of this growth is because we have very suitable habitat for these bears. And unfortunately, there's excessive human-related food across their range. So that gives the population a high potential for growth. Of course, we do not encourage giving any wildlife food. They have plenty of food right out here. I'm looking out. They love dandelions. One morning, I saw a bear, and I'm surrounded on three sides by People State Forest. And I saw a bear out in the yard, and she was feeding a dandelion the flower to her cub. And I thought, wow, that's cute. I never knew they liked dandelions. Well, and my backyard was covered with dandelions. When I came home, I didn't have a single dandelion. So they graze grass, they eat all kinds of plants. Uh, so these are the reports. The breeding population of bears in Connecticut is continuing on a long-term trend of expansion into more cities and towns. And again, over the last 3 years, sows with offspring have been reported in 117 different municipalities. Again, just 7 years ago, sows were reported in less than 50 towns. So that kind of gives you an idea of that. So bear conflicts too have risen. Thousands of human black bear conflicts are reported each year and also follow a long-term increasing trend, as you can see. While greater numbers of conflicts do take place in the western half of Connecticut because there's more bears, residents are reporting issues with bears from all across the state. Now, some of these conflicts can be as much as they tore down your hummingbird feeder or they pushed over your garbage can. So they're not all serious conflicts, but we are seeing some serious conflicts, particularly of greater numbers of bears entering houses. And largely, these entries happen in yards that have food available for bears. And then maybe you just cooked a pie and left your window open and they smell that great little smell, and your sliders open and they come in. They're very adept to use their paws. They can easily get in cars. Their smell, sense of smell is 200 times ours and 8 times that of a bloodhound. So they can even smell a Cheerio in your closed car. So we got to pick up after ourselves. So incidences of bear entering and breaking into homes occurred in 22 different municipalities statewide last year. So this is a problem, and we can help to address those problems. And I will tell you how without trying not to preach. So Reported conflicts, as you can see here, it's just 2001 to 2020, but the number is the biggest leap. They rose from 0 in 2001 to 3,507 in 2020. Again, 2020 is not a typical year because we were outdoors, we were leaving food out, probably, we were stuck home, but but it does show there has been a consistent leap in those problems. Bears in houses, home entries reached a new record in 2022 with 67 incidents reported. This last year, 35 home entries occurred, and it's an increasing trend. Even though there was a drop then, we're not exactly sure, but there was pretty good food source out there, natural food sources, and that might be the reason. Many of these incidents, again, occurred when the bear pushed through a screen following odors from the kitchen or the pantry. So also when there's more home entries, we think there was a drought in 2022, so there was less available food sources. So the bears were doing whatever they could to find some food. So most of you have probably seen this video. I mean, everybody looks at these videos and think they're cute, but it really isn't. It's dangerous for the bear and it's dangerous for people. And I'm showing it to you only because it shows you how adept they can be. This woman has a restaurant and brought a fresh cooked lasagna home to her mother and had just put it in the freezer. Her sliders were open, her windows were open, and the bear just came in. I don't know how it knew how to open the freezer drawer, and there it goes. But so as you see, they're very, very adept at getting what they want. And it is not a good thing for the bears, and it's not a good thing for you. So Deep does have a no home entry policy. If the bear is reported and captured, it will be euthanized because once they enter a home, they enter homes again. It's not like a one-time thing. They have management policies for all species of animals and sometimes have to make really hard choices. Not choices they want to make, but they're choices that they have to make for the protection of not only us, but also wildlife. So the conflict reports, now these pages are all from that state of the bears I told you about, and really I encourage you to go to Deep's website and see it. So the number of serious conflicts involving bears does rise each year. As you can see by this graph, a great portion of them are bird feeders. That orange is bird feeders. That is human provided food. The gray is trash. So as you can see, like almost 50% of the issues are pretty much human costs. Beehives, they will get into beehives, but electric fencing will solve that. Livestock issues. Say if bears are omnivores, so they don't chase down prey. About maybe 8% of their food is meat, which could be dead stuff, carrion or some other animal. If they go into a hen house because they smell the feed there and there's no feed on the ground and they turn to their right and there's a chicken, they might say, oh, that might be good to eat. So they're not running down animals like a grizzly would, but they will if they come upon an animal, they might eat it. And we have had incidences of a little larger livestock eaten by bears, but it is the exception rather than the rule. So again, the vast majority of bear-related big issues usually stem from bird seed out or trash. Many towns now have ordinances that prohibit birdseed out from the end of March till the end of November. And that will probably be a state statute within the next couple of years because it's really necessary to manage our wildlife, not just bears. The birds, the bees, the bears, everybody have plenty of food, once the spring comes. So I know you love to see birds, but I have some kind of plant in my backyard that was here when I bought the house, and it brings dozens of hummingbirds, bees, butterflies, everything. So check out a lot of native plants. So more than 85% of the livestock conflicts in recent years have involved backyard chickens, and that's what Deep says now. If you're going to have chickens, you need to protect them. You need to have electric fencing. You need to make sure that your hen house is secure at night. I mean, raccoons eat chickens, loose dogs eat chickens, coyote, fox. So it's not just bear. A lot of things prey on chickens. Um, so again, as I said, there are fewer home entries in 2022 than 2023. The trend is cause for concern. So we're having to do what we can. You can see similar states here. In Massachusetts and New York, they each have about 4,500, 7,000 bears respectively. They see less than one home entry per 100 bears each year. We've averaged 3.1 home entries per 100 bears. But both those states have outlawed bird feeding during those months I spoke about. Those states do have hunting, but from talking to the biologist, it's pretty much the human provided food that has been the greatest issue. So again, you can see here another graph, and these graphs are all in line for you to see. You can see the states there that have annual conflicts, annual vehicle kills. And for the size of our state, we have a pretty high vehicle kill. Pennsylvania is huge. I drove through there last year, and they harvest 500,000 deer a year. So they have a lot of wildlife. Right now, we're at about 1,200 black bears, and you can see the population in Massachusetts, 4,500. The great portion of them are in Western Mass, New Hampshire, 5,800, and Maine, 38,000. So a lot more land up there. So feeding ordinances, these are towns that have enacted those. They have had a good effect in those towns, and each town, as they go along, the ordinances have gotten stricter. Don't worry, Big Brother's not going to come with binoculars or a drone over your backyard. It's going to be left up to neighbors. I had a woman I was talking to, and her neighbor constantly fed bears and would have like 5 bears, not just a mother and her cubs, in her yard. And the woman had grandkids. So imagine if the grandkids are in the woman's house next door and they have a peanut butter sandwich in their hand. That bear is going to smell that sandwich and maybe wander over there, particularly if it's a younger bear. And it doesn't not going over there to hurt the human. It just wants that sandwich. But if it grabs for the sandwich, somebody could get hurt. So these ordinances would be set up to protect both human and bears. So in any management of any species, there's conflict management. Our biologists spend a ton of time talking to people about what to do. They talk about bears denning on homes. If you can see on the left, there's a bear under a deck. That person fed the bears or fed the birds all the time. So the bear decided, maybe I'll just stay here. The winters aren't all that bad, and I'll come out and get a little nosh and go back. So if there's any kind of damage, say if a bear broke your part of your garage door because you had garbage or birdseed just inside it, then they would set traps, not to euthanize the bear, but then they would do what we call aversive conditioning. They make a lot of noise when they're chasing the bear. They might pop it in the rear with a paintball gun just to make it say, you're not welcome here, don't come back. So if you have a problem with a bear, make all kinds of noise, those little, you can even use little firecrackers, not throwing them at the bear, but just pop them. They don't like loud noises. And also you can always call Deep and they'll give you some guidance on what to do. So it's kind of incumbent on us to help us coexist with these animals. Again, be bear aware. They can be found anywhere in our state. You have to manage your food and garbage. You can put some ammonia around your garbage. That does help, not with all bears, but it does help with a lot of them. You need to remove all traces of bird food, including hummingbird feeders, except for during winter. Again, even in the winter, it's good to keep the ground below your feeder clean, but if you're insisting on food in the summer, remember, raccoons are vectors for rabies. And if you have seed out, they're going to be coming in, and so are fox, and so are other animals, because guess what? Little rodents hang around and they'll eat those. So if you see a bear in your neighborhood, just leave it alone, give it escape route. Never let a dog go if it's on a leash if you see a bear. And don't get closer to take a photo like those Torons out west. I mean, just appreciate there's the bear. I take pictures of bears through the windows. So most of the pictures I have, you'll see I've gotten through windows because, as I said, I'm lucky to be surrounded by state forest. If bears are just loitering around your home looking for food, make noise. I use what I call a bear scare can. It's a metal coffee can with coins in it, and you shake it. It's not a natural noise to a bear, and generally will frighten them and frighten other animals, might frighten your neighbor, but just make all kinds of noise, and they generally will move on. So again, feeding bears, you can see almost all these states except for Maine and Massachusetts have made feeding bears illegal right now. We do have a law in Connecticut that says if you have birdseed out and you attract bears in your yard regularly, somebody can report you, and then you will be warned by the town, and then you will have an escalating fine. So we do have that in place. So engaging a population in a state or in a region and trying to determine how many number of that species an area can tolerate is called carrying capacity. So that's the maximum number of organisms of a particular species can be supported indefinitely in a given environment. Carrying capacity is a question that biologists don't always like to talk about because it's kind of a vague number to figure out. There is a cultural carrying capacity as well, which will lower the number of the tolerance, and probably Connecticut lands somewhere in between those two. Again, we need to slow down at nighttime. Our roads are black. A lot of our animals are dark. They get hit. This is a yearling near the reservoir in Barkhamsted. Very sad. But if you do see a bear, a bobcat, or a fisher, please call INCON, that's her number, and let them know. If you have gloves with you and you see a bobcat or a fisher and can just pull it off the road, please do that. For some reason, people are taking these animals. You're not supposed to take any wild animal that's hit by a car, but that way the biologist can take these animals in and do a necropsy on their stomachs, see what they've been eating, and get a lot of important data from that way. It helps them learn more about the population and the dynamics around the state. So habitat suitability for black bears in Connecticut. So that red in the middle there is obviously at the top from north to south, before it veers off to the left, is the Connecticut River Valley. And then, of course, down there, 95, the Gold Coast. I wouldn't want to hang there either, but I don't want the bears there. There have been some reported there, but luckily not too many. The dark greens are all very, very suitable habitat for black bears. And as I said, the bears have started going across the Connecticut River. Also, some have come down from Massachusetts. So they are populating there. Here's the typical profile of a black bear. They are a very impressive looking critter. Bears and many other animals do rely on healthy wetlands to sustain them throughout spring, summer, and fall. Uh, they will go in water when it's very hot, like last summer. A lot of the bears would just be hanging out in mud or water, waddling in mud. They're very good swimmers. Now, the bottom left, I had an old cooler I was going to take to the dump, and it had rained a lot, and there was water in there, and this little cub got in there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what if he gets his butt stuck in there? But then he left, and then his two other siblings came. So they do like the water. Here I finally got a picture of a bear in water, and the mother was trying to get her yearling to follow her in the river, and the yearling wasn't so sure about it, but finally it did. And but it clung very close to mom, as you can see. Again, they can swim also up to about 6 miles an hour, not as far as a polar bear. They have very large web paws that help propel them through the water. and the thick fur, and they have underfur that helps keep them warm in cold climates. And this is always interesting to me. Their long necks allow them to take deep breaths without swallowing water. So they're very well suited for swimming in lakes and rivers, and they can swim about 1.5 miles without having to stop. So, as I said, bears are much better at the swimming longer distances because that's how they find all those seals. Black bears, as you know, are forest animals. They are now appearing some in less forested areas throughout the Southwest and parts of the Midwest. Their preferred habitat, though, is forest land. They like to have a lot of streams, swamps, a thick understory. So that's like that knee-high brush, because they like the vegetation beneath it. They love berries, acorns, beech nuts, and now I don't know if you've heard, but our beech trees are now being have a disease coming up, so that will affect some of the nuts that the animals eat in the fall. Nuts are called hard mast. Soft mast would be things like cherries, viburnum, leaves. There's even little hearts of pine cones that the bears eat. So they can find a lot. In the spring, particularly, they'll come out and they'll eat carrion, dead stuff. If they're wandering along, and you know how the mother does leave their fawns sometimes so they can eat. If they see a fawn, they might take it. They're not taking dozens and dozens and dozens of fawns, as some people like to say. It'll be a random take, if that, and usually in the early spring. They even will tear into bark. If you've been hiking along, you might have seen some fallen trees that look like they have little claw marks. They'll tear in there and they'll eat all kinds of insects. So again, wetlands are important to them to forage for foods. The first thing they love in the spring, aside from human provided food, is skunk cabbage. They love skunk cabbage. They're very strong. Also, they can casually slip boulders weighing over 300 pounds with a single paw, so pretty strong. This is a bear that I got to see last autumn, and it was just it seemed frustrated or playing. I'm not sure, but interesting. It was also possibly going for insects. I was quite far away and hidden. They're not like beavers. They don't eat the cambium under the bark. So I'm not sure whether this bear was just bored or what. but but there's kind of them in action. So again, skunk cabbage, when it comes out in spring, they're very happy. As you know, skunk cabbage is very abundant. This is what it looks like. Here's claw marks of a bear where they held the leaf down to get at the fruit. There is fruit in there. It smells awful. It can be eaten. I did take a tiny taste. I wouldn't recommend it. They say if you eat a lot of it, that it can make you nauseous. Animals don't get that nauseous probably, but how would we know? Again, they love berries up on Bear Mountain, which is part of the Appalachian Trail. It's in the Appalachian guidebooks that when you get to Bear Mountain in late July, you'll have lots of blueberries. And yes, there are acres and acres of blueberries, but guess what? Oftentimes there'll be black bears sitting there shoveling in the blueberries. So again, they do like, as I said, they like dandelions, but they also have a sweet tooth and love honey, like someone else we know. So here's a beehives, as you can see, by some farmer. And if you were in the room with me, I'd say, how do you think these are? Well, here's a state-of-the-art beehive. This is electric fencing, solar panels. So after your initial cost of building this, and bears do get zapped by the electric fencing, you can put some bacon inside a piece of foil and their noses hit it, and most bears will avoid it, but not all. It's never, there's always that one fox terrier when you have an electric fence, and their collar and they run through it no matter what. So, well, here's what happened to that other beehive. So Deep did come out, not to punish the bear, but to give it aversive conditioning. They talked to the farmer and gave them suggestions. So any bear they handle, they will tranquilize and process it. So they weigh their claws. They measure their claws, they measure ears, they weigh the bear, they check its teeth, everything about it. They scan it to see if it has what we call a pit tag, which is like a microchip, and then they can see if it does have maybe where that bear was from and who its mom was. And then after that, they'll wait until the bear wakes up, and they'll just make all kinds of noise and tell it was a bad boy and send it along its way. So this is fencing. You can get this online. This shows you kind of the best fences to protect domestic livestock. And this is set up for bears, but there's other fencing for other kind of critters. You can see that baited aluminum foil over there, and usually 8 inches between wires for black bear. And you got to use 12 or 14 gauge wires. Obviously, it's like people trying to protect their trees with chicken wire from beavers. They can cut right through that. So uh, most of this fencing is always specific to whatever species that you're trying to keep out. So myth or reality, once a bear has tasted human food, it won't eat wild anymore. Totally untrue. They like all kinds of food. Please keep up your plastic. If you have this kind of a container, cut it in half, because many animals, I've seen deer, I've seen bear, I've seen all kinds of animals with these containers on. They do prefer wild and natural food, but if there's food easy to get, they will go for it. They're very good at opening cans. Luckily, the garbage pickup where I live, they now have bear-proof cans. And a friend of mine had a bear try so hard, it was on the video, to get into the can. Well, it's rubber, but it couldn't get into the trash can, and so it carried it 2 miles out into the woods, and it had claw marks and bite marks all over it, but it didn't get in there. So you could definitely smell the food in there. So the creation of 1,000 forests is in one acorn, Ralph Waldo Emerson. So for black bears in New England, it's mostly translates into a lot of nuts, which are called hard mast. During the winter, a black bear has to eat, in late August, they have to start eating. They go into what's called hyperphagia. They have to eat 20 to 30,000 calories a day. Their normal intake would be about 5. That's equivalent to 35 Big Macs a day. So here you can see this one bear, a female. She's not a young bear. You can see her in August, and then you can see her in November. So that's how much they really bulk up. Here she is again, another year. So you'd almost would tell me that wasn't the same bear, except she has tags, so I know she is. So they really have to pack on the calories, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. So bear biology, black bears, yes, that probably is a 500-pound bear. But funny thing, most people, when they tell me they saw a bear, they always say, I saw a 400-pound bear. And I'm like, how come everybody always uses 400 pounds? But now everybody's kind of lifting that number up for some reason. But again, most of our wild bears are smaller than our human food provided bears. So and that's not a good thing, but anyway. So you can see adult males they're called boars, up to 600 pounds. Females can be up to 300 pounds. We've had a few a little bit over that. They do breed late May to August, and at that time, if the sows have yearlings, which will be about 16 months old, they'll send them along their way, because one, they don't want to endanger them with the boars, but also it's time for them to be on their own. The cubs are usually born in early January. Usually, I think January 8th is the date we use. And there's only 6 to 12 ounces when they're born. Their eyes are closed. They have no hair. And they can have 1 to 5 cubs. Our average in Connecticut is 2.5. Imagine that, but math. And they can breed between 2.5 and 3.5 years. They can live for an average of 18 years in the wild. The record is an impressive 39 years. The oldest captive black bear was 44 years old. So they're very resistant to disease, very able to overcome even being hit by a car. We have a sow here in Connecticut that's now upwards of maybe 28 years old. And she was the first sow we know of that had quadruplets. Uh, this is a very tall black bear. And people's like, oh, what's he doing? Scratching his back? Well, they do carry a lot of ticks, but in this season, they're going around and they'll rub themselves on a tree. They'll probably even bite that branch up above. As the males walk along, the biologists will get calls. This bear is very stiff-legged. I think he got hit by a car, but they actually are urinating as they're walking along because they're really marking. Animals are all about food and also about marking their territories. So again, there's a sow and a little cub, as you see, and here's some other photos. You can see the little cub's looking out and about. Sometimes things get a little messed up, as Shakespeare asks, to hibernate or not to hibernate. This is that same sow you saw you saw the two different sizes. We had a big November snowstorm. I forget how long ago, but it really bad out here where I live. And after the bears have eaten a couple of months of all that food, they get into like the sleepwalking state. So sometimes they'll walk along and just plop down and sit there for a while. Well, she did this in the snowstorm. So she just sat there, and I was able to see her because she was on my Ring camera, so I was able to take a picture through the window. And she just sat there the whole snowstorm. So she got snow all over her, but their fur is very protective of wet and snow. Black bears are solitary individuals, except when a sow has cubs. And she will nurture them through 2 winters and then send them packing, as I said, between 16 and 18 months. Uh, when it's time to mate again. The sows with cubs will enter the dens first, so with their new cubs, followed by sows without cubs that are going to be having cubs, and then lastly males. Fat bears, though, do enter before thin bears because their systems tell them they've got enough nutrient to survive. Again, black bears don't fully hibernate. They go into what a state is called torpor. They're too large to achieve radical temperature change of small mammals, yet they do decrease their body temperature by about 7 to 8 degrees, and then their metabolism by 60%. And then their heart rate slows from 40 to 50 beats to 8 to 19 per minute. So the higher body temperature and their greater metabolic process does allow them to become active relatively quickly if some danger came, or say a fire came or something that threatened them and they had to get out quickly if they were disturbed, if they were nursed, and also for the sow to nurse the newborns. So again, it's called torpor, not hibernation. Generally, most fully hibernating animals are under 7 pounds. So they also will brush in debris into their dens, as you can see. So oftentimes when the sow gets her den ready, you'll see a whole strip of land that has been combed through for her to pull stuff into the den there. So they do that. Pretty interesting behavior, but hey, you're going to be in there for a few months. It might as well be comfortable, right? So in Connecticut, typically, bears begin hibernating maybe mid-November to early December. We're seeing that number later now, sometimes in December. Some don't fully hibernate at all. A lot of those deck bears aren't really totally hibernating. They're waiting for the next food fix. So again, weather does affect that a little bit. While hibernating, the animals themselves don't emit any kind of smell. They don't make any noise or movement. They don't have to pee or poop. They don't have to eat, obviously. So pretty interesting phenomenon. Another interesting phenomena is the sows. If they haven't gotten enough, so they, as I said, mate in the summer. and the eggs are fertilized but not implanted until November, when the body determines whether or not there's enough nutrient for the sow to be able to support cubs. If there isn't, the eggs are never implanted. So just another one of those things that nature gives to animals to help them survive. And, there's other animals that do also have that delayed implantation. So as fall sets upon, they're busy, like I said, packing in the calories. They don't necessarily return to the same dens like eagles or other things. They're just eating, 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 and all of a sudden, oh, I think it's time to den now, and then they plop down. So there does come that time though, if the weather is bad, when their internal clock says it's time uh, to emerge after the denning. Here are our den types. This is still pretty accurate, although we've seen a few more in outcroppings of rock, but a lot of slash piles, where like fallen debris of trees, they'll get under that, a couple of down trees together. I mean, we have them even nesting in the open. Here's some different dens you can see here. The one on the right, I'm going to show you a bigger picture of top right. That was on top of Phragmites in a beaver marsh, and that is a bear with her two cubs totally exposed. This is a slash pile, so kind of to the left of that right tree is where the bear is. Here you'll see a biologist with a jab stick, which is a tranquilizer stick, and there's a bear in there. There's the one in the Phragmites, pretty interesting choice. Here's one under a deck. If a person has a bear denning under their deck, they usually call Deep, and Deep will come out and they'll talk to them. If it's a male bear and needs to be on its own, they'll probably try to chase it out. If it's a female that's going to have sows, oftentimes they'll see if the homeowner doesn't mind the bear staying there, and of course tell them, please, you can't have any food out. So here's bears in a hollow tree, and the biologist would have to get down there to go get them. You can see the climb marks on the right there. Some biologists in New Hampshire decided to cut a door in the tree, and they tranquilized the mom, and then they processed the bears. And when they put them back in, they just put the door back in, kind of hobbit-like. So imagine this bear got in this little small crevasse between these rocks, and the biologists do go in there to get her. This is out west, a little different looking. So research and studies. So winter den studies, very important. So we have a number of collared bears in the northwest part of the state. I think the last number I heard was about somewhere between 25 and 27. Some have been studied since like 2007 or 8, so it's a long-term study. It allows the biologist to use telemetry to find out where the bears are, and that are the sows with collars, and they can find to see if the yearling survived, or they can see if the sow had cubs that year. So it's very, very important data, helps them figure out reproduction rates and everything. So very important to the biologist. So here's a den. As you see right there, the bear is that dark spot under there. And that's a little bear cub crying. They kind of sound like little kitties. And so there's that same bear. So she's been tranquilized. So the biologists get what's called a jab stick, and they'll put tranquilizer on the end of it, and then they try to tranquilize the bear like that. There's always a biologist with a tranquilizer gun in case the female's not fully tranquilized and tries to run, because they don't want her to hurt herself. And once she's tranquilized, they put a tarp under her, pull her out, and then get her cubs. Here's the cubs of that bear. The one in the middle is a male, and the other two are female. And they'll take the cubs and they'll weigh them, they'll measure them, they'll look at their teeth. They put what we call pit tags or microchips in them. They do the same. They weigh the mother and do all of that. And you can see their claws are very long, so they can climb pretty quickly. Sows are very protective of their young. Again, here's some more just another look at a few more dens. So now this sow has been processed. She's not quite awake yet, but a biologist always stays there to make sure that she wakes up, she's okay, and that there's nothing threatening her cubs. Again, as I said, the biologists are very committed to protecting the wildlife. So I meant to also tell you that during hibernation, they lose about a half a pound a day. But we did have one collared bear that weighed almost 273 pounds after the winter. So again, they're not coming in as much as we thought. There you can see in the very middle of the picture, the white collar of that bear. Um, Again, the cubs that when they barn, they're less than a pound. They have very little fur, and the mother will feed them. She's aware enough, awake enough, and she moves in response to the cries of the cubs. And she can nurse them and shift her weight so she doesn't rest heavily on them. It's a full-time babysitting job, though, and it does keep her somewhat awake, and she does lose weight during that time. About 2 to 3 months of age, she'll come out with the cubs, but she wants to make sure that they've had enough nourishment and are strong enough. They'll weigh about 4 to 6 pounds then. So there you see she's asleep and not asleep. She's tranquilized. And here the biologists are bringing the cub out. And there you can see the jab stick with the tranquilizer gun. Some of the places these bears den are kind of sketchy as far as, if the bear came out not tranquilized. So the biologists have gotten very good at remembering having records of what the sow weighed the year before when she went in, and what she weighed then, and they can kind of gauge how much tranquilizer. So here this one went in, and now they're waiting here. They have tranquilized the bear, and they're waiting for her to go down. That's the jab stick. I wouldn't want that in my arm, but apparently it doesn't. They don't really feel it much. Uh, Here's Melissa. She's usually sent in after the cubs because she's small and fearless. So not that the cubs hurt you. They really don't claw that much. All they want to do is be warm, because imagine they've been under a bear for quite a few months, and they just want to keep warm. So here's a young male hanging it all out. So very, very cute. Although in my opinion, most young animals are cute. Here's how they weigh these. So imagine if this was a 600-pound bear. So Jason now is our top fur bearer biologist, and fur bearers are animals with fur. And he's about 6'5" or 6'6", very strong. On the right is Paul Rigo, who just retired, and what a remarkable biologist. He was with the state for almost 40 years. So they hang it on a pole, and then they raise the bear up, and they have a weight on there so they can see how much they weigh. Here's that female I told you that's almost 30 in Heartland, who had our first set of quadruplets. So here they are nursing on their tranquilized mother. And so this is one of the oldest collared bears. Unfortunately, she died of cancer last year. The only reason we know is she was collared, and then she was sent to Yukon, and they found it out. She was like the queen of the forest around here. She had 18 cubs in her life, and she was a very good sow. There's her last den, little cubs. And the little cubs are weighed in a bag. So this one cub, a couple of years ago, little mama's had one cub, and she didn't want to go in that bag. She kept screaming. So finally they had to zip her in, but it was only for less than 5 seconds just to see how much she weighed. So uh, again, this year there was a house up on one of the big hills in Avon, and for the second year in a row, this sow has denned under this house. The inhabitants are never there in the winter, so they gave permission to, let her stay there. So these are the biologists now. The bear had caused this hole there, and the biologists are having to remove those stones to get access to her there. So here's the nursing mother there. Again, they're very protective of their young. One morning, I looked out my window to a tree way out by the forest, and little mom was nursing her cubs. It was pretty special to see. And as soon as a black bear sow perceives danger, she doesn't go running towards it. She just has programmed those cubs and she sends them up the tree. You can see them saying, do we really have to go? And this is called a bear can. So if they need to capture a bear, they have this can, and in the back they have a heavy basket full of donuts, and it's weighted. So like a raccoon is not strong enough to pull it down, but if a bear does go in there and pulls on it, that gate will shut. And then the biologists come out fairly quickly and process the bear and then let it go. Most of them are pretty docile. They just ate like, about 2 dozen or more donuts. And this was a black bear that got in a tree in West Hartford. So it had to be tranquilized, and there was like one of those catching trampoline type things below. So here's just a handsome black bear. So what does it mean if a bear has collar or ear tags? Most people think it was in trouble once if it has one. Really in trouble twice, third strike, you're out. Well, that's not true. Bears are very, very um, strong individuals. And so unlike cattle, if you put 2 tags in a cow's ear, they can't really get it out. They don't have paws. But black bears can. They might get it snagged on a leaf. So the biologists put 2 in, hoping that one remains. So um, every bear does receive 2 tags, 1 in each ear, the first time it's handled. Most of them have not been caught as problem bears, but as a project to research the state's bear population. These tags do help them track bear movements and dispersals. We've had bears in Connecticut travel as far as Vermont, and bears tagged in New York and Massachusetts. Even Pennsylvania has shown up here in Connecticut. So they also help identify individual bears if they have a repeated problem, but that's not the primary purpose. A bear with a collar, the sows are the only collared bears. They also will have uh, tags, and that data is GPS data. And used to the biologist would have to take the collar off every year, get that data, and download it. But now they can monitor it from a computer and see the bear's movements. Very, very important and valuable. So here's a little bear. Just to show you this, that's not its little privates right there. It's just a little wisp of hair. And that's one way to determine if a bear is male. They have that little wisp of hair. So here's the tag colors right now. They were red in 2022. I believe I was just told what they were. I'm sorry. I think they're 2024, they're white. And in 2023, they were yellow. So I had a senior moment there. So each tag on it has a 3-digit number code. The last digit indicates the year, and the first 2 numbers is the sequence in which it was caught. For example, a bear with ear tag 03-6 would be the 3rd bear handled in 2016. So this is also online if you want to find it. So here's just a few other bears. You can see how many she's had, a total of 16 cubs. I called her the peeking bear. She was always looking around the tree. And she was very protective. That was her first cub ever. And this bear here is the one you saw with the 2 different sizes. That was an empty bird feeder that had been emptied for over 10 years. So it still had some smell. And this, I just want to show you bears and other animals. If you put a ball out, animals like fox and stuff will play with it. This little bear decided to make its own jungle gym. Looks like a little kid there, huh? Boom. And then it would run back and go up the trunk again. The mother was off to the right eating clover, and it would go up again and come down and up again and come down until the mother huffed and puffed and told it to come down, and then it went down the trunk because she meant business then. So this shows you what the GPS collars reveal. So the purple area is that when I said little mama, she pretty much controlled that area. On the right is the Barkhamsted Reservoir, Lake McDonough. And then you can see the green of the other one, the movement there, and the red. So at one point, little mama was in mating season, and so was the one in the red. And the one in the red came over near where little mama was with two male bears, and she chased the one in the red up the tree. Now at the time, the one in the red also was on the east side of the Farmington River, which is that little strip there. But after she was chased, she never came back. She established her own territory. So these are signs of black bear. You can see trees marked. In my neighborhood, a lot of the telephone poles have bear claw marks on them. Again, that's just another sign of making your territory. You can see the tracks are nothing like it here in the state. No Sasquatch here, nothing that makes this big of a track. Uh, Here's a bear, as I said, marking a telephone pole, and they'll just gnaw on it. And here's their typical tracks. They walk on the soles of their very soft feet. So they often don't leave distinct tracks unless they walk through soft mud or snow. They do shed their pads every year, and will grow them in the den, which is pretty interesting. They have 5 toes on each foot. Their large toes on the outside of the foot, and the smaller inner toe sometimes doesn't show in a track. The foot pads are larger at the outer edges, and the front tracks are shorter and wider. A lot of bears kind of toe in when they walk, if you've seen them. They also do what we call an overstep walk, or a direct register, where their hind foot falls where their front foot was. So you can see that on the right side. And a lot of animals do that. One, it makes them quieter in their approach. Um, and in deep snow, bears do this a lot, because the hole's already created. It's like if you're following your friend, they're snowshoeing, you're getting the benefit of them behind. So there's a paw, and as I said, that's what their pads look like, and they will shed those. Here's just a nice trail through the woods, and mostly these are direct register, so they're walking on that snow, and then their hind foot is covering the front foot. I asked my friend out west, because he gets tracks of black bears in the sand a lot. I said, send me a picture. Then I made fun of him, and I said, you still carry a pocket comb? Anyway, so when you're measuring tracks, and again, we have no other tracks that are the size of bears here in Connecticut, except maybe, some big basketball player, but uh, I always cut, those tape measures that you used to have your hems. You go to the tailor and they check your hem. I usually cut those smaller and carry with me, because if you measure the track of an animal plus the distance, their gait, then it helps you identify, some of the smaller, harder animals to identify. So the black bear skull is pretty big. It's 12 inches long and 7 inches wide. It's made up of cranial bones and facial bones, and the cranium does surround and protect the brain, like us, and the organs of their hearing and balance. The facial bones hold their eyes, and they have 32 teeth. So their whole skull is very strong and anchors muscles that hold their head up and allows it to chew and form vocalizations. They have various vocalizations. So pretty distinctive skull. If you're into biology, here's all the little parts and names of them. So, all right, so their claws, very important. They are climbing critters. This is one young bear there that's just, a lot of times they just climb up and down and hang out. So their front claws are much shorter, less than 2 inches in length, but they are sharper, because they pretty much pull themselves up with their front feet and just use the back to kind of push. They also use the claws, as I showed you, to tear into rotten logs and stumps looking for insects, and they also use them to climb trees as an escape mechanism. So their claws are more curved than a grizzly. that makes them more suited to climbing trees and for digging. And grizzly bears have longer, less curved claws and a large shoulder muscle mass that's suited to digging rather than climbing. This is kind of typical. This is a bear scat with natural food, and scat is what we call bear poop or animal poop. So bears are unpredictable. They use body language and vocalizations. This one was hissing at another bear, at a male. She wasn't ready to mate, and they'll hiss, they'll chatter their teeth if they're really particularly uncomfortable. They'll kind of huff and puff. They do have a bluster, a false charge, so they'll slam their front feet down and then kind of jump about a yard, but they always stop. But you know, if you see a big black mass of fur coming at you, you get a little nervous. But you never should run from a bear, because in a bear, even though a black bear is an omnivore, not a carnivore, it sets up play or prey instincts in their minds. So again, standing on their legs doesn't really mean they're going to charge you. They're pretty much trying to get a better look. My friend from California also sent this, and I told him I thought it was a human in a bear clothing, but it's not. Well, and they even has a McDonald's cup there, but it really was a bear. I saw some more pictures of it later. So sniffing is another thing that you'll see the bears doing a lot. Even a black bear who really has no predator here in Connecticut aside from humans and cars and our behavior. You'll watch a big black bear will be eating something. Say they're in a field just eating dandelions or grass or whatever, but they'll always look around, even if they don't have cubs. They're always looking around and, you know, sniffing the air, trying to see what's around. So if a bear charges you, climb a tree. No, they climb much better than you do. They are very accomplished climbers, even though some are very heavy. Often they're more courageous in trees. A lot of times they'll sleep in trees. I've observed them sleeping in trees a lot when it's hot out. So I don't know if it's the shade. I would think they'd want to be in water, but this is they'll sleep there. This is the one when that little mama chased Scruffy up the tree. And I was afraid that the bear on the left was going to go up on the limb and that they'd all come crashing down, but she didn't. Eventually, the other bear stayed up there for like almost 20 hours before she came down. And then she went to the other side of the river. So if Sal perceives a threat, the first thing she does is send her cubs up a tree. Then she knows they're safe. She'll hang around the area, you know, and just wait until the perceived threat is gone. Uh, as I said, don't run. If you see a bear, you can't outrun them. It's better to stand your ground, say, hey, bear, yell at it, make noise, appear big, you know, raise yourself up, do jumping jacks. If it still starts coming a little, throw things at it. Generally speaking, that'll do the trick. This guy is on my road. The bicyclist saw a bear crossing the street, and he did the right thing. He just stopped to let it go. I'm not sure what this guy's doing. He's following it, but he's not making any noise, and the bear seems to not care. Sorry, I couldn't resist this sign. And never ever let your dogs loose. If you know there's bears around in your yard, you know, don't let your dogs loose. You know, I go out, I shake my bear scare can before I go outside, you know, and then I'm either the dog is on a leash or I'm there every second with them. But if you're out hiking and you see a wild animal, please don't ever let your dog loose. It's not good for your dog and it's not good for the wild animal. To feed or not to feed, again, from late November when they come out. We don't say don't put birdseed out in the winter, but as I said, from late March until late November, it's really not a good idea. I meant to point out on the left there, you can see black at the base of that tree under that mountain laurel. That is a bear under there. That was how she picked her den. Kind of interesting. So again, in the winter, they might come out and raid your food, not causing a lot of damage, but in the spring, they're very hungry. They're coming out. They're looking for food. They smell the chickens. They're probably not getting in there. It's pretty closed up, but they can smell stuff. They're a little hungry. They're a little cranky. And that's the time when more than any time when they might eat some domestic livestock. But again, as I said, it's the exception rather than the rule. They're looking anywhere. That's that bird feeder that a friend had on a tree, had bird seed in it for, I don't know, 15 years. I don't know why she didn't just take it down, but it still retained, some kind of a smell. And again, the bears get into garbage. They don't unwrap stuff. They just eat it. They have even been known to eat motor oil in a can. So the more the mother gets into the garbage, she teaches the bears. Same with bird seed. Uh, so bears, their normal day of 5,000 calories per day includes about 80% plants, 15% insect and grubs, and 5% animal matter. So again, they can run up to 35 miles an hour. So as I said, you don't want to try to run for them, but generally they're pretty much about finding food and then just chilling for a while. Um, so just a few pictures. They do choose food that's readily available and abundant, and that's why bird seed and garbage is so easy. That a lot of people think these photos are cute, but when bears start doing this, they're going to start getting in trouble. Sows teach the young, how to get into bird seed, and then those young, when they have to leave at 16 or 18 months, oftentimes get in trouble. Again, you don't want them peering into your windows. If you see a bear peering into your windows, just start him making all kinds of noise and chase it off, because, as I said, if they go in a house, it's a policy that they have to be euthanized because they won't just go in once. Kind of interesting story. I call it the pie eating bear. It's in my town. This woman had cooked an apple pie, and that's her kitchen door and window, but she had to go to the store. She left her window up, so only the screen was there, and this young bear smelled the pie. It went in through the window. The neighbor heard the young dog inside yapping at the bear. The bear ate all the peelings of the apple and the pie, but didn't even touch the dog, of course, and then just came out the window. Uh, so a bear might even take your iPhone. Imagine you're at a campground and you had a peanut butter sandwich. Well, guess what? It smells like peanut butter, so it might come. When you do your report a bear, we ask you to report a bear sighting. That's important, but it doesn't mean you're getting in trouble. But in some instances, if they're calling trouble, here this bear obviously can't reach this bird feeder, so you could report it only as you saw a bear. Here you would be reporting because you saw a mother and her cubs. Here you might tell the rancher, although I can tell you, having grown up on a ranch, that cow's going to put some significant hurt on that little bear. Again, they're in our midst. They are growing. They really are rarely aggressive towards humans. Don't believe everything you read on social media. Everybody acts like they're a wildlife biologist. You do have to respect the bear. They are a big animal. If you see them in your yard, just back away, go inside and enjoy the beauty and magnificence of this animal. And like I said, most of my photos I take through the windows, or through out a car window or something. So again, this is cute. This woman should have scared the bear. Instead, she took a video. But to show you how adept they can be at stuff, this bear goes in. It gets one apple, then it leaves. And at this point, the shop owner and the woman should have scared the bear away. So if you ever face that, please do. So again, this guy in Simsbury, he put feed in that bucket, and then he came outside because he wanted to photograph a bear. That's kind of like the Torons out in Yellowstone. Not a good idea. This man takes his young child outdoors to take a picture of a yearling bear. Not very smart, because yearlings are nervous. They've left their mom. It's not a good thing to do. Again, you saw this. I don't know why they're running, but they shouldn't. Now, this guy's doing the right thing. Both the bear sees him. He sees the bear, and he just waits there. And I was told that the bear just went on across the road, and everything was good. So if you're a bird lover living in bear country, to feed or not to feed is a conundrum. But as I said, right now we're at a critical mass. It's causing great harm to our bears. And hopefully doesn't cause great harm to people. Hopefully we're smart enough to stop putting the seed out because it's obviously a huge attractant for bears. Again, we saw that. Um, a bird-friendly habitat, there are a lot of native plants. You can look them up online that will bring you many more species of animals and birds than birdseed. Save your money for the winter when sometimes the birds really need it. So stop feeding birds from late March until late November. Try to keep your garbage. If you feed your dog on your deck in a dish and you leave that dish out there, even though there's no food in it, a bear can smell it from a mile away. And in the bear's mind, it's food. So we have to just clean our barbecue. We have to try to be as smart as we can. And if a bear comes in the yard, if you want to quickly take a photo, but then you don't want it nosing around your deck or anything. If it gets near the house, you want to scare it away. Here's not a very good garage. There was a can of birdseed right in there. So some people put feeders way up on a tall pole in concrete. And if you did that, you have to keep the ground clear because the bears will smell it. They don't like safflower seed or Niger. Some people tell you to put cayenne pepper on it, but it doesn't seem to matter. Um, watering lawns doesn't bother them because usually it's hot and they like the water. Motion lights have gotten to where they don't bother them anymore. It's kind of like thieves in the night. They don't seem to care either, but don't put them near fences, obviously. Even in the winter, try not to put your bird feeders near fences because animals like raccoons and stuff can get easy access. So food, glorious food. It's all about the food. That's the Mount Washington Hotel where a bear came up on the porch there, and this was a this was at a parade in Simsbury. I mean, I'm sorry, Avon, and this bear is going right along, and most of the people aren't paying any attention. So I couldn't resist this because I get really annoyed at all those people out west that just don't listen and do whatever they want. And these people said, this was a form you fill out. Our visit was wonderful, but we never saw any bears. And then they said that we believe it was such an expensive trip that we should be able to see bears. So, oh my gosh. So if you're camping, remember that your toothpaste has sugar in it and the bear can smell it. So you always want to put all your food away from where you're sleeping. There are pretty good bear canisters now. Used to you had to hang it high on a rope. Also the clothes that you cook in, better to put them somewhere else because they smell like food too. This is the old setup of how you used to do. You'd hang it up. But like I said, they have new little bear cans that you can put your food in. Uh, Now out west, a lot of the guides now are using bear spray as opposed to guns because even though they might be good shots, they found that in that kind of situation with nerves and adrenaline, that bear spray is much more effective. It shoots like 30 yards. People ask me here if they should carry bear spray. I tell you that, I mean, I hike all the time. I've climbed all the mountains over 4,000 feet in New England, the Adirondacks, and in the wild, hiking, I've never seen more than a dozen bears since 1975. So, uh, I tell people like I carry pepper spray when I hike because I'm a woman, and I'm by myself. Bear spray, you have to practice using it. If the wind's wrong, it might do some good hurt on you. But the guides out west have found it to be the most effective thing for protection. We're talking mostly about uh, against grizzlies. The bear spray researchers found it stopped aggressive behavior in grizzlies in 90% of the cases, whereas guns were effective in less than 65%. So you wound a grizzly bear, it's not very happy. Pepper, I don't mind if I do. So bear spray is pretty big, and as I said, it can be pretty not lethal, but it blinds and can blind whoever's shot with it for a short time and make them nauseous. So and incapacitate them. This is that document that I encourage you to look up online. It's got all this information I've talked about, and you can look at it greater detail. And just here's some magnificent of bears. I hope we all try our best to protect it. I did put a ball in the yard one time and that bear did carry it. My friends accused me of Photoshop, but he actually picked it up. Um, Got my dancing bears, but actually it was two yearlings scuffling. That's a pretty big bear, probably a 600-pound bear. When bears stick their tongues out, when I was learning about bears, I thought, oh my gosh, he's suffocating. It's too hot, but they're putting their pheromones out. So this I call the most handsome bear I ever seen. I called him Valentino, and if you're in my age bracket, you'll know why. This is kind of the difference between a male and female bear. Pretty large difference. And keep your eyes open. You never know when you'll see a bear. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. Let me just get out of here and come back.